Welcome back. I'm Randy Bueller, joined by Eric Frolick this time. Welcome, Eric.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited. I'm watching some good matches.
Have you gotten to watch any of them so far?
Yeah, I've watched both of them. I missed Pakula versus Martel game 2, but I heard it wasn't much of a game. But I'll go back and watch the 8 seconds it was anyway.
Sounds about right. What you have any thoughts on the deck choices people have made so far, or is this about what you were expecting?
That's a good question. I was actually expecting Pakula to stay more niche, like play a blue control deck, and for potentially everyone else to try to play like an anti-blue control deck type of deck. And so, like for Pakula to end up playing the Stacks deck, it wouldn't have surprised me for any of the other players to play Stacks decks, but I wouldn't have put him on it.
Huh.
So it was kind of surprising. Like I actually thought there was a reasonable chance that with all of LSV's trolling on Dredge, that he might actually just show up with Dredge or something.
Yeah, no,
along those lines.
he definitely did a lot of trolling. We had an email thread where I was just posting the schedule for the week. Luis, saying don't forget deck lists are due Tuesday. Luis replied all with a Dredge list, like instantaneously, which obviously he was kidding. But then he also qualified for the Vintage Championships this Saturday with a Dredge list, and like he was trolling, all of which felt like he was just kidding. But then there was so much trolling that I thought it circled all the way back around to maybe he's actually running Dredge.
Yeah, there's definitely a reasonable chance. LSV is definitely the type to not pass up on a troll or a next level troll, and so I thought this might have been a next level troll type situation. But yeah, ended up multiple fast mon decks already and an oath deck. So these are the decks that I expected everyone wanted to play, and so I kind of thought that people would play decks that beat them instead of actually playing them. But that being said, they are extremely powerful, and that's not necessarily easy to do.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got Dave Williams and Stephen Menendian ready. So you're observing the game in Magic Online, right? You're all set up.
Give me a second.
Yeah.
I've clicked watch game, but
yeah, you should be there, right?
Hasn't actually opened yet. Are they actually in the game part?
Yeah. I mean, Dave looks like they've both kept 7, and Dave has won the roll. They're just waiting for us.
Yeah, I've clicked watch game a while ago, but it is not loading, so I'm going to close this and try again.
Yeah, sounds good. So I was telling the story earlier. Williams is apparently in the middle of a poker tournament and just walked away from the table long enough to play and seemed happy that we weren't going to that he wasn't going to be able to lose any of his chips for the next half an hour or so.
Okay, I do have it open now.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we tell the players they're ready to go whenever.
Yeah, I've been talking to Dave all day, of course.
I haven't heard an update in like 90 minutes or so. Is he still doing well?
Yeah, he's got a big stack. He's doing quite well in the tournament. So
is he just totally like? What do you think of the play of walking away to play Magic for a little bit? Is he crazy or
is that really
it's day one? So whatever.
Is that 100% what's happening, or is he saying that's what's happening?
I mean, I looked at updates earlier today. Like his dinner break was an hour ago, so. I think he's playing at the table. Is that what's going on?
The request to watch this game cannot be sent. Did you get that same error or just
No,
me?
I'm watching. I mean, not that they've started. They're kind of waiting for us. But
I have the game open. It just said the request to watch the game has failed. Oh, that must have been the other one I closed, maybe.
Oh, the other one you closed, sure.
I mean, I do have the screen open. I can see the clock ticking down. So
yeah, they're just waiting for us to make sure we're into the game.
I believe Dave is actually playing at the table. When he says, I got to walk, that means that he got a walk in the big blind, as in everyone folded to him, I think. I don't think he's actually walking from the table. I've watched him play Moto from the table more than once.
That's insane.
Actually, in this tournament last year, we were at the same table, and there wasn't even anything really worth playing, but he was still playing a sealed deck daily. This is not uncharted waters for David Williams, that's for sure.
Got it. So he's just literally with a laptop in his lap at the poker table?
Absolutely, yes.
That's awesome.
Dave's style. And at the World Series this year, he was having a bit of a tough time. Things were not going very well for him, and he felt that he was kind of losing his patience. Things were rough, and he was making some mistakes, he felt. And so he just started taking his laptop and playing Vintage once it became on Moto. He was taking his iPad and watching videos, and just basically no longer had to feel the same boredom, I think he felt, which caused him to do some more reckless plays, and then went deep in multiple tournaments in a row.
Crazy. Okay. Fair enough. Menendian is off with a turn 1 preordained. Dave did take a mulligan to 6, by the way. So Steve's on the play with 7. Looks like another blue controlish deck off Preordain. I don't know anything about either one of these decks.
I'm guessing Steven has been a big proponent of the Young Pyromancer Delver deck. So turn 1 island into Preordain. I believe there's a reasonable chance he fetched the island because Dave said in the chat that he was playing shops, which of course is not at all true.
Curse Catcher. We have a Merfolk deck.
Turn 1 Curse Catcher for Dave Williams.
Wow.
So, I think that might have been part of his reasoning behind fetching the island, but of course can't see his hand. Not 100% that that's true, but I'm guessing
Dave was
that
representing shops in the chat.
Yeah. He's a good bluffer. Things are going well for bluff front.
Although even against Merfolk, the island is still better. Like this Merfolk deck Dave's running, I'm sure it's got 4 Wastelands in it. I mean, it's per Wasteland, Null Rod, Curse Catcher. Part of the reason to play this deck is that you think you can punish other people for cheating on mana.
Yeah, I've seen a few versions lately that have skewed the Wastelands for Mutavaults. So
I saw that list, and my theory is that guy doesn't own Wastelands.
You think?
That was my theory. Like, Mutavault's decent in the deck. Obviously, it's a Merfolk. It gets pumped up all the lords, but Wasteland is the reason you play Merfolk, I think. Yeah, I put that guy on not owning 4 Wastelands.
Yeah, that's completely reasonable. It is interesting. I've been talking a lot with Huey Jensen as I actually cracked a few packs of Tempest that I found yesterday. He urged me to crack them, and he was a little bit worried about investing in Wasteland because he thinks that there might be an issue that Wasteland is the most valuable card, basically, on Magic Online.
It's true.
Basically just Black Lotus being more expensive, and as an uncommon in Tempest, that is a little strange.
Yeah, I mean, Wizards has certainly made an effort to reprint cards when their prices have gotten ridiculous. But yeah, it wasn't in Vintage Masters, so it is now the second most expensive card on Mitgo, trailing only Black Lotus.
You're basically looking at a Wasteland fetching a trade with Ancestral Recall plus Mox Ruby plus Mox Pearl, something along those lines. So, yeah, it's a weird world on Magic.
So you cracked your Tempest packs?
I did, yeah.
How'd you do?
I opened a Wasteland.
Nice.
Yeah,
How many
I opened a Wasteland and an Intuition. So I didn't open a Lotus Petal, so I feel like I got pretty unlucky.
Well, how many packs was it?
8.
8 packs, all right.
And no Lotus Petal, so I ran pretty bad. But
you ran pretty bad on the common part of the print run.
Yeah, I mean, there was
you did okay for uncommons.
The Wasteland was fine. It wasn't a foil Wasteland, so like, and just an Intuition in the rare slot. So yeah, I ran a little below expectation, but
no Ancient Tombs either. You're gonna get.
There was an Ancient Tomb, but Ancient Tomb's actually down to like 1 to 2 tickets now.
Oh, because it's in Vintage Masters. Sure,
yeah,
the supply
that was like a big hit. So yeah, Ancient Tomb was one of the most valuable cards on Magic Online as well. A lot of Tempest cards being really valuable, but the reprint did not do it favors.
I'm guessing the fact that Dave is currently tanked for 5 minutes there was him playing a hand in the poker tournament.
That would make complete sense. He did give fair warning to everyone and Steve that is a very likely thing to happen.
Yeah.
It's turn 2 Time Walk cycle.
He gets in a point of damage. The land drop's pretty nice here too.
So it's like a zap.
Well, the land drop is pretty big. It's an Explorer.
Yep.
Assuming he's got a land. I mean, he went Wasteland here rather than Island, but so Steve's thinking about this.
Yeah, he is likely short another land. I imagine if he had Island or Caverner Souls, he would have played them. But
yeah. Yeah, and you see Steve is pretty...
Steve was actually thinking or just didn't know that Dave was back.
Oh, possible, too. Yeah, also Steve does not want to crack that Misty Rainforest. Like, he left it uncracked because of the threat of Wastelands, and now there's an actual Wasteland, so he'll be even more hesitant. And when he cracks it, it's always his tension. He'll be very tempted to get Island so that he doesn't lose it to Wasteland, but then again, at some point, he's going to need his other colors, whatever they are.
Right. More likely has to crack it during his main phase if he's, let's say, red mana, so that... he can actually add it at sorcery speed.
Yeah.
Cast a Young Pyromancer, try to get a bit of a board presence. Assuming that's what he's playing. I guess
we don't
not sure
know for sure.
Yeah, it does play top, doesn't it? I'm not sure.
So Silvergo Adept revealed a Lord of Atlantis. Dave plays a second Wasteland.
Wasteland floated.
I don't know. Are you ever wasteland flooded in
nice.
Vintage? I'm not sure that happens.
He fetched turn 1 island, so we have 2 wastelands to no non-basics.
We'll see.
I assume that Steven's playing a deck with multiple basic lands, so it's going to do a little bit of work, but he has gotten around it decently well so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of lists in the format these days that aren't even bothering to play basic lands because you don't see a lot of fish decks. The shop decks will play Wasteland, the fish decks will play Wasteland, but there aren't that many of either of those, especially given how expensive Wasteland is on Magic Online. Steve, though, he's a guy who thinks a lot about his mana bases, and he's certainly played enough IRL Vintage where Wasteland's there's not so much of a card availability issue around Wasteland, and his mana bases tend to be built such that they can live through this.
Right, and of course he can metagame against only a 3-person field, basically. He knows his first 3 opponents and can change decks afterwards. So, if he might be putting Dave on a deck that plays Wasteland. I don't know who he plays in round 2 or 3, but if that is a more likely scenario, then of course.
I had Dave on Tezzeret. That's the deck he's been winning with online. I've seen him in some of the daily deck lists posted on MTGO.com. I had him on Tezzeret.
Yeah, I know Dave's been trying quite a few decks at the table today. So trying to figure out what made the most sense.
You think this decision got made today?
I don't think. I know for a fact.
Wow. He did not know what he was playing when he started.
This was not the deck that he was playing at 3 p.m.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was actually playtesting games against Hall of Fame elect Paul Rietzel, who recently won a set of Vintage Masters and is now addicted to Vintage.
Nice.
And he wasn't loving some of his other choices and some speculative decks, so decided to try something different.
Maybe we'll have to get Paul in for season 2. Hook him right on in.
Yeah. Could be all Hall of Famers soon.
We'll see. You're assuming that neither me or Bob or Luis finishes 10th.
It's true. I am assuming that. Well, I had you and Bob as my picks to win it, and Luis is 1-0. So, yeah, that's my guess, but we'll see. So slow in the action and slow in the gameplay itself.
Yeah, Steve's a little deliberate. Dave's a little distracted. We'll get there. First 2 games flew by for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Compared to some of our other matches where you only get 1 land out to be on turn 4 and have 5 spells total cast. Very different than some of the other games that we've seen so far.
Yeah, Steve's real issue here is that as soon as he decides to start casting spells, it means he's going to have to crack those fetch lands. And, depending on what he's playing, maybe he has a second basic island. He probably doesn't have any other basics in his deck.
No, it's unlikely. A lot of his Delver lists do have exactly 2 islands. They usually have a mountain in the sideboard, which I think is generally for boarding and things like Ingot Chewers against decks like Stacks. I'm not sure exactly if that's his rationale, but that would stand to reason.
Wow. Null Rod. Yeah, this is what the fish deck does. 2 wastelands and a Null Rod. Good luck.
I imagine there will be a response at least of activating this top.
Sure. One last time.
Yeah, Null Rod can be a powerful card against Steven Menendian decks, that's for sure.
Yeah. You probably want to flip the top for a card, right, and then shuffle it away at this point, yeah?
There's a few options that you can do. It's going to depend on your hand. If the Null Rod's going to resolve, then you don't really want a top sitting on top of your deck or in play.
But he can crack a fetch land and shuffle it away.
Of course.
He's almost certainly cracking a fetch land now with his Brainstorm. He can crack both of them and shuffle in between.
Yeah, I assume if he's gonna Brainstorm before topping, that he's probably gonna crack a fetch land, move top to the top, and then fetch again. That's the most likely scenario, at least.
Yeah, this is kind of the problem with the fish decks, right? Dave's got a clock. It's only 3 power. He probably needs to set. This deck really needs 2 islands to be super threatening. All the lords cost UU. But now the other guys brainstorming and topping and cracking fetch lands. Have I done enough? I have 2 wastelands and a Null Rod. That A lot of vintage decks get really shut down by 2 Wastelands and a Null Rod.
Oh.
But he just has to hope it's good.
Hero Regery. We have a 1 Blue Lord. Could have that.
Well, he could have Regery. That's true.
Dave commenting that's funny. He's in a poker tournament and is struggling to play out his turns, but yet their clocks are very similar.
I'm a little bit surprised he tapped 2 Wastelands for this Null Rod rather than leaving a Wasteland untapped. Like, that makes it more tempting for Menendian to go get non-basics, right? Because he can use them now, for instance, untap, do something main phase.
Right. I mean, he could have another Wasteland in hand, or
or he could have Island,
depending on casting.
Well, he probably doesn't have Island because he would have wanted to go Island Lord before combat.
Yeah.
The 3rd Wasteland would make sense with this line.
Could also
have Spell Pierce, maybe.
Could have Spell Pierce. Could have Ancestral. Could have
Ancestral. It's a good one.
There are a few cards he could have. Not a lot. Could have also just not been thinking, where your opponent has no non-basic lands in play. It seems better to leave up your blue mana, and it doesn't actually have an effect.
All possible.
So are we still thinking about this brainstorm? DW has a 1-minute clock advantage, so
yeah. How is Dave ahead on the clock?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. So how's life?
Well, I don't know what's going on with this Twitch denial of service attack or whatever it is. That's
that's
exciting. Not the most exciting thing to have happen on day 1 of the Super League.
Yeah, that wasn't the best timing.
So if any of you are watching us live, I think some people can get in right now. We are going to just rebroadcast things after we're done. We've got a local recording. We'll, of course, post the local recording. We'll also just rebroadcast the local recording, assuming Twitch is up and running by the time we're done here. So the games will be out and around. Probably you're watching us on replay right now, in which case, yeah, wasn't it weird how Twitch went down right when we started? What are you expecting from Josh? That's your opponent, right? You have the last game?
What am I expecting? Oh, man. I expect the unexpected.
Expect the unexpected?
Yeah, Josh is a brewer. I do not expect to see a mainstream deck from Josh.
Okay.
What it is, I have no idea. I mean, the problem is Josh knows me. I don't know whether he'd metagame specifically against me, but we've talked about Vintage in the past, and he knows how much I like casting cards like Ancestral Recall.
Sure.
I have artwork of Ancestral Recall in my home. So, yeah.
I'm watching a chat with our players in it. They're posting haikus about Menendian's ability to resolve a brainstorm. I see 10 birthdays. My grandkids grow old, move out. Please resolve brainstorm. Williams is in the blinds, but his hand's terrible. Yeah.
This is a bit extreme.
This is definitely a bit extreme. We're in 4 or 5 minutes at this point.
Can someone text him, make sure he's still breathing? If something did happen to him, that was a joke and in bad taste. I'm sorry.
No, Menendian does have the reputation of being fairly deliberate.
This is... Oh, a card went back. 2 cards. All right. Here we go. Norod may or may not have a response to it still.
Yeah, no, we went with 60-minute clock for these matches, not because we wanted the 60-minute clocks to matter, but because untimed isn't possible on Magic Online. You have to pick something, and we just wanted to make sure we had insurance against disconnects or whatnot. We might have to start timing Steve's matches. Be the one guy on a real clock.
I'm okay with that. So, Norod.
Yeah, still no
I think
Rod.
the longest Norod's ever been on the stack before. Because this one's not close to resolving yet.
Nope. No, there's still 2 fetch lands and a divining top, not to mention whatever's in Steve's hand.
So the match on deck is going to be you against Rick Shea then?
Yep.
So same question you asked me. What do you expect out of Rick Shea?
All right. Well, Rich Shea has been very consistently playing the same basic deck on Magic Online. So he's been playing essentially Knight's Whisper Control Slaver.
Right.
He plays Goblin Welders to go get Mind Slavers. He plays Dak Faden, which lets him get stuff into the graveyard to bring back. He plays Knight's Whisper to sort of keep the card advantage flowing. It's essentially, I mean, you see a lot of people playing Gush. He's getting his, card turns into 2 cards. Okay, so crack to fetch land, and now he's doing the trick of activating the top as a response to putting it on top. So anyway, I'm expecting Rich to play that deck. I don't know if you noticed the Magic Online newsletter that goes out every month, which had, in the most recent issue, had the 10 players with the highest winning percentages in Vintage. The Atog Lord was there. That's Rich Shea. That's my first round opponent. Like, he's in the top 10 for Vintage constructed matches. Hit Mitgo. And almost all of it. I mean, every time I've seen him, he's been playing that Control Slaver list.
What do you think of that deck?
I think it's good. I think that I don't know. It's definitely good. I'm not convinced the Goblin Welders portion of it is worth it versus the other control list, but I mean, it's really hard to argue with his results with that deck. I mean, he's been playing it for literally decades.
What, decades this deck's been around?
I mean, Goblin Welder was printed in like 1998, right?
Sure.
That's 16 years ago.
Oh, was I really haven't played Vintage for that long. Was Thirst for Knowledge a 4-of that you could have back in the day?
Thirst for Knowledge was a 4-of at one point. I mean, so maybe it needed Thirst before it got good, but I mean, the deck is definitely in its second decade. And honestly, it hasn't been super prevalent in the Vintage metagame, except Rich has single-handedly been bringing it back.
Right, I hadn't heard much about it until, Magic Online.
All right, so that Null Rod resolved, and Dave really was tapped down to just an island. So Steve was able to get the 2 undergrounds, and then play a Time Walk. He's running a Preordain into a Curse Catcher here. I'm sure this is partially deliberate, just so that he gets to stop thinking about Curse Catcher. But yeah, Dave tapping those 2 Wastelands for the Null Rod, however long ago that was, I think was just a mistake. He should have tapped Island Wasteland so that he could waste one of these undergrounds. Yeah,
I mean, it is normally right to leave up your blue mana to represent counter magic in most matchups where your opponent has no non-basics in play. And so him being distracted by playing poker is likely going to be the cause of, those slight missteps where you're not thinking 2 turns in advance or the next turn in advance or how the turn's going to play out necessarily. So going with the instinctual play, and I agree, it was probably just a mistake.
All right, so here's the little window, and Menendian is on a Gush list. So now we know pretty much for sure. Gush, you can put him on Pyromancer at this point. Although Underground Sea?
Volcanic Islands.
We had not seen a Volcanic Island, you're right.
Doomsday.
Whoa!
All right.
Wow.
So for basically since I was a kid, when the light came out, I've wanted to play a Doomsday deck, and I've never felt I was smart enough to figure out how. And I do not consider myself to be anything short of intelligent. I'm very high on my own intelligence, and I've never been able to figure out Doomsday.
Yes.
So, yeah, this is exciting.
Wow. That is insane. So he got a 1-turn window basically because, Dave tapped a Wasteland for his Null Rod. So what? He gushed, floated the black mana, replayed an underground. So those 2 undergrounds were capable of generating 3 black mana this turn. Now he resolves Doomsday. So he's going to he gets to stack his library, he gets to pick 5 cards, and that is his library. Presumably he has a way to draw one of those cards, and then that will give him a way to draw the rest. So I mean, the Doomsday deck, what it tries to do is build a 5-card stack that instantly wins the game. It's usually at this point the name of the 2/2 blue guy that if you draw a card with no library, your opponent gets killed. Sorry?
Laboratory Maniac?
Yeah, Laboratory Maniac. I think that's usually the Doomsday kill.
So
his
this actually
laboratory.
explains a lot of why it took him basically 10 minutes to figure out Brainstorm. Because this is a
Yes.
very complicated deck, and I don't
Yes.
expect it to be getting any faster anytime soon,
Wow.
because this is not easy. Like, I've heard of the rumors of the Menendian Doomsday articles, that they are intense. And yeah, this deck is not an easy one to pilot. It's not an easy one to sequence. And if you mess up, you lose. So, yeah. This is interesting. I'm trying to figure out how much those wastelands, not leaving the wasteland untapped, really mattered. If he had the gush, it's hard to say. It seems like it mattered a lot, though.
I think he doesn't get the third black, right? If there's one wasteland untapped, he kills one of the undergrounds before Steve untaps. I mean, there was a time walk turn in there,
He doesn't
but
have a way to generate black mana sand, sure.
yeah, I don't think he could have gotten to 3 black without 2 undergrounds.
Right.
I do see, I'm watching our player chat from time to time. They're giving Steve a little more slack for the slow play, given that, it's a Doomsday deck. This one, there is more to think about here.
Yeah.
Still, might have to put him on a clock. We'll talk about it.
Right. I mean, it's really cool to see a deck that you don't get to see as much.
I agree.
I am excited to see this play out, but if you have people watching, you do need it to be played in a pace that it is still entertaining. So, I love the additional entertainment of playing a deck that is more off the radar. That is very cool.
Yes.
But you have to,
So the Doomsday player, when Weatherlight came out, the guy in my group who decided I've got to build the Doomsday deck was Andrew Cuneo.
Oh, okay. Had to be Eric or Andrew.
It was Andrew. Andrew, we would go to Origins. They had these like team tournaments where we'd have like 5-on-5 team tournaments where everybody's playing a different format. And we'd have Cuneo on the end playing, Vintage. It was called Type 1 at the time. But yeah, he was running Doomsday back when there were not a lot of cards printed. I guess the card pool was less than half what it is now. It should have been 98, 99. That Cuneo could... Speaking of brewers...
Still one of the best brewers in the world.
Absolutely.
I think he's actually one of the most important pieces of the Pantheon, one of the obviously big super teams in Magic today.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he gets a lot of credit for that. I think he goes very under the radar of just how much he brings and just how incredible he is at Magic today.
Wow.
If I had to start a new team, you get these questions all the time in sports. Like, let's say you were starting a basketball franchise. Who would you start with after LeBron James, let's say? And right at the top of that list has got to be someone like Andrew Cuneo.
Wow.
Like, he's just that good and that useful to a team.
Nice. Yeah, so it's hard to imagine not knowing what Steve actually has in his hand. He's going to lose half his life. That's not going to matter. What he has to do is he has to build a stack such that he can... Ideally, he wants to be able to draw the top card immediately and win the game. I think the reason he's thinking so much is that he doesn't know what Dave has in his hand. He knows that Dave has 4 cards. He knows that Dave has an untapped blue mana. So it could be... there could be a mental misstep sitting in Dave's hand. There could be a spell pierce. There could be a force of will. These are the sorts of things where what Menendian wants to do is build a stack that can win even if Dave does have one of these. Yeah. Meanwhile, odds are Dave has none of them because...
What do you think the odds are that Steve wins this game? Are they
Dave,
basically off the charts favorite?
Yeah, it's definitely above 95%. Okay. Would I bet on Dave at 100 to 1? I might take 100 to 1 on Dave from here.
You have to imagine he doesn't have Force of Will, or he'd probably try to fight over this Doomsday. Of course,
yeah, exactly.
He has 7 cards. One of them's an Underground Sea, but he's got some things to work with. The question is also can he win this game now through No Rod? I don't understand.
Oh, that's interesting.
I don't know what the Doomsday decks rely on as far as mana and how you win right now through 5 cards. With 5 cards, I'm saying with the Doomsday. So yeah, I don't exactly know.
All right. Well, it looks like
he was an off the charts favorite, but I don't know for sure.
So I don't know if we're allowed, if we can see what the 5 cards that he got. I just saw a bunch of cards go to the exile zone, so I know that he has essentially resolved the Doomsday, but I think that's just the rest of his library. So I don't think Magic Online showed us what the 5 cards are.
They aren't revealed in real life, are they? I don't believe so.
No, you're right.
Search for the cards and then you put.
Yeah, okay, you're right. He's just searching, so we shouldn't. There's no way we would have gotten to see them here. You're right.
We can just ask him.
Yeah, I mean, even if Dave has nothing, I think he needs to see Steve play it out. There also is a chance, you're right, that the no rod could be disruptive enough here.
So with 25-minute clocks, I don't think Menendian would have any chance to win this match. He's almost timed out. It's turn 4 or something.
Yeah, they waited a little bit for us to get here, but...
All right. We'll say instead of being 21 minutes, let's say it's been 17.
Still a fair point.
It would still be tough to win. He still has to win this game, let alone another one.
Right.
If Dave takes game 2. Like now that you know what you're up against, you're going to sequence your plays. You're going to do things a little bit differently. I don't think Dave had any idea he was up against this deck. I didn't have any idea he was up against this deck.
Meanwhile, Dave Williams just had his poker table break. He's been moved to a new table. The new table sucks. Checks in on the game. Nothing has happened while he was moving. Cards have been exiled. I guess we can see what Menendian's list is. Preordained, Brainstorm, Walk. He's got Thought Seizes. He's got Misdirection in there. He loves Misdirection. Force of Will, Duresses, and Thought Seize. He's got a Flusterstorm. He's got Tendrils. A couple Force of Wills. Another Flusterstorm. Imperial Seal. Yeah, I mean, it's the usual sort of blue and black shenanigans.
I don't see any real artifacts. I mean, we have Pedal.
Wow. Does this deck
I guess they could all be in his hand.
Well, I don't see I only see like one Dark Ritual. He probably kept a bunch of Dark Rituals.
That would make sense.
But
yeah, I don't see Lotus or any Moxes.
And now he's going to have to say go? Is that how this game works from here?
This is interesting.
Really? He's holding an Underground. We know that from the Gush. Wow. And he does not have a way to launch into the top of his deck. He could easily have like Black Lotus as the way that he often gets started, right? That's how a lot of Doomsday stacks will involve a Black Lotus.
Right, Black Lotus is good at adding mana.
Pardon?
So we're already down. He's at 6 life, so he doesn't have a lot of turns to actually win this game.
It's true too.
And his Underground is wasted. So not a lot of mana to work with, and his artifact mana is turned off. So I don't know if he's a lock to win this game or he has no chance to win this game right now.
I bet he's got Underground in his hand. We know that from the previous Gush. I bet he stacked some Dark Rituals. Maybe he's got like Ancestral Recall followed by Ritual something.
Sure. That could certainly be a thing.
Yeah, and Dave's basically going to present, you're dead next turn. Now you need to kill me.
Yeah, Ancestral is not exiled, so we can say that's safe to be in his hand or on top of his deck.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually the obvious card to start one of these stacks with.
Is there a way to make this exile zone big? Can I do that?
You can scroll it a little bit. You can sort of reach.
Let's know if I can make it big to see it all at once to try to count up some numbers to see if you can have an easier time figuring out what's in his hand.
All right, 2 mana. Blue.
Okay.
Purples to get rid of the Null Rod to turn on his artifact mana.
All right, so expect to see some Moxes and Lotus now.
Yeah, indeed.
None of those are exiled.
Wow, so this must have been just a hand he was sitting on when Dave played that Null Rod? Yeah, he was slow rolling a lot.
Gush and top. So, he might have kept that artifact mana off, let's say, top, because he knew that he was going to have to Doomsday into...
And now there's the Ancestral that we were predicting as the top card in the stack. So now he's drawing 3 cards from a library that only has 4 cards.
So he can Lotus and Lab Maniac if he has it. And
he needs to draw 1 more card. He needs to draw 2 more cards to actually win from here.
Right.
So presumably there's a Laboratory Maniac, some Dark Rituals, and some way to draw a couple more cards. Oh, Gush would do it. Here's the Black Lotus. So if he goes Black Lotus, Lab Maniac, Gush, that's a win?
That wouldn't be a win. Trying to
There's
count
the Black Lotus for blue mana. Is it Laboratory Maniac?
Yep. Looks like there's only 3 Gushes removed, so that would make sense.
There's the Laboratory Maniac. If he would draw a card while their library is empty, he wins the game instead of losing it. With 1 card in his library, Gush is now lethal.
Yeah, that was sweet.
Game-winning Gush. There you go.
Expected Dave to show up with the Days, play a Lord, and kill him.
He's got 1 mana floating to beat Days. Menendian was on top of the Days plan.
I see. Okay. I missed the little one at the top.
Wow. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I can. All right. So there was game 1. Steve Menendian took a while to find the line, but he does manage to get off his Doomsday. He has to say go. He has to give Dave a turn, which is why he was in the tank for quite so long. But he does manage to get that turn. He's able to Hercules the Null Rod away, play his artifacts, Ancestral to draw the rest of the library that he set up with Doomsday, and there you go.
Yeah, it was interesting looking through his exile, and there's no Moxes or Lotus here. Like, can he win?
He must only play the Jet and the Sapphire?
No. I'm not sure there'd be no reason to slow roll it. I guess maybe he was trying to win because he does have Tendril in his deck that he was trying to win through Storm.
Sure.
If that's a possibility that he might slow roll them. I can't. Like, as I said, this is not a deck I have familiarity with, so I'm guessing. But
yeah, no, I've read a little bit. I wonder if Menendian remembers the 3 minutes for sideboarding. By the way, because there's no setting for that. Magic Online gives you 3 minutes for sideboarding. Period. The end. That match will launch whether game 2 is going to launch whether he's ready for it or not.
I have a feeling if he did not get his sideboarding in time, that we could figure something out, a la the rotisserie draft finals when sideboarding.
Yeah, that's fair.
We could figure something out, but it would be nice if he could sideboard in under 3 minutes. I would appreciate that.
Yes.
Sideboarding in Vintage actually probably easier than something like Standard, assuming you're playing against a deck that you're not that familiar with, as there aren't generally that many cards you can bring in, and generally aren't that many cards you can bring out. You know, decks tend to have a lot of cohesion. There's not, like in Standard, you're going to play matchups where 4 Thoughtseizes, those can come out. They're not good. 4 Underworld Connections, those can come out. They're not good. 4 Bile Blights, these type of cards are just not good, and you're just bringing in the best thing you can. Where you don't have 4, this is not a matchup where Ancestral's bad. You've got your few one-ofs that aren't as good that you might not want. Like, might be playing some matchup where your Hercules Recall is not good, or you don't need your Thoughtseizes, but, it's not quite as complicated in a lot of ways.
Fair. All right, looks like these guys are off to the races with game 2.
All right, let's do it. We got Merfolk on the play.
Yep. Yeah, no. I think Merfolk is actually... I don't think Dave's unhappy to run into Doomsday. Things didn't work out that game, but his Null Rods are good. His Wastelands are good.
Right.
Steven he showed us the 1 basic island ever?
Right. Yeah, I think the matchup's probably pretty good for Dave. He's probably happy to see it. Being on the draw, having a mulligan, not having a second blue source, and then perhaps the mistap on the Wasteland, all those things kind of, it just ended up not working out. I don't think he was necessarily in a bad position, though. And actually, if he had squeaked through a few more points of damage, or maybe had another blue mana to cast that Lord earlier, that Doomsday, the fact that Steve could not go off that turn, he would have died.
Yep.
Had he been able to cast more creatures earlier. Like, Steve was only at 6 life. So a Lord of Atlantis, which would have added 2 more damage and added 4 more damage the following turn, would have been enough.
Well, I mean, 6 was 12
Well,
divided by 2.
I'm saying it depends on how the turn gets sequenced, but there's
Totally
a
agree. Second blue mana probably would have won the game for Dave. Not tapping that Wasteland might have won. I mean, he basically gave Steve a little tiny window, and Steve went into the tank for 20 minutes and came out with a win.
Yeah, we don't know for sure that would have won. Like, there's a reasonable chance Steve just had something like Dark Ritual, or other ways to cast his spells that he had 7 cards in hand. So there's a reasonable chance that Wasteland didn't matter. But yeah, we don't know for sure.
That's a good point. Any Dark Ritual in Steve's hand means the Wasteland didn't actually matter.
And honestly, even if he didn't go off that turn, Dave wasn't doing anything. So it wasn't necessarily essential that he had to do that. Of course, the Wastelands were the reason why he did. So if he had if the Wasteland got left untapped and he couldn't go off that turn, had to wait another turn, leaving his lands tapped and maybe just losing that top value, it's not necessarily the end of the world. So that was another possibility.
Yeah, I'll buy that. So Dave went Cavern of Souls Go.
Right.
Not a great first turn.
Well, there aren't a lot of great first turns for Merfolk.
Well, I mean, normally, though, you want to either play a 1-drop or leave up a blue mana. I mean, I guess Mental Misstep, he doesn't mind if that's the counter he's got. This draw, that makes the draw better.
Right. His life total is certainly not super relevant. So right. Leading off with Cavern when you have Mental Missteps is certainly...
No, I just meant he doesn't get to represent like a Spell Pierce, for example.
Right. Which I actually don't think is a super common card in Merfolk. But you also don't get to represent Daze, but you're probably not going to Daze on turn 1 anyway without a 1-drop. It's pretty bad.
Daze with your only land and no creature in play is pretty bad.
Yeah. Unless you have to draw into Mox Sapphire then.
All right, Menendian is thinking about this misstep. I don't remember seeing missteps when I went through his list. Did we see them? We must have.
Yeah, I actually didn't take note of... I felt like I saw them, but I didn't take note of it.
Was all blue and black.
It's probably not great in this matchup, right? There aren't a lot of missteps, but I guess it counters their missteps. I mean,
it is not great in the matchup. All it does is counter their missteps. And, the Curse Catchers are annoying. So here's an uncounterable Lord of Atlantis off the Cavern.
Sure. Yeah,
2 blue mana should make Dave's beat down a little
better.
better.
Uncounterable because the Merfolk decks run 4 caverns. And other than that, you're looking at, 3 to 4 missteps and, an Ancestral.
So that's probably Steve just thinking long enough to represent the fact that he might still have misstep, even though it's a bluff.
Sure. Either that or he's just incredibly slow. Well, he's definitely incredibly slow. Whether he was thinking about it or not to try to represent something, I have no idea. Luckily, while Steve is playing incredibly slow, Dave seems to be chipping up near the chip lead of the WPT that he's playing in. So,
is he? Oh, yeah. Good for him.
He's up to 260,000 chips, which sounds like a lot. I know average coming into the day was around 60 to 70, so that has to be really good.
Oh, is this day 2? I thought this was day 1.
Yeah, it's just day 2. All right, so going right for the Underground. See, of course, I don't even know if he has another island. Right. Certainly see one game 1. So now if Dave has the Daze, we will likely see it.
Yes. It's not like you need to build up to 3 mana. I mean, he might have a couple of 3-drops.
Right. I said he may not even have Daze in his deck, but, it is a reasonable target here. As once, I guess Steve is going to have to use a bunch of mana, even though his spells aren't going to necessarily cost 3 mana. He's going to probably need to have a lot of turns where he's playing multiple spells. So, not necessarily dead later. In Legacy, I think that happens a lot, where, if you're playing one of these aggressive decks, Rug Delver or Merfolk and the like, that you want to be able to use your Daze for value when you can still cast good spells in your next turn, but probably not the same here.
So, Merchant Scroll revealed a Gush.
Gush, powerful card in Vintage. A lot of people are running Gushes.
This is 3 or 4 so far?
It's at least 3. Yeah, I think 3. There's been 1 in each match.
Okay. Yeah, 3 for 6.
Gush versus Oath and Gush Doomsday versus Merfolk, which might also have Gush.
I would guess not.
It is an unlikely inclusion, as the deck does not play that many islands or ways to get them. Of course, the other decks don't play many islands either, but fetch lands all kind of count as islands.
Right. I keep expecting you to know Dave's list, and apparently this wasn't his list the last time you talked to him.
Well, maybe I know exactly Dave's list, and I don't want to reveal it yet.
Okay. That's possible. Yep, Wasteland and Underground, that totally makes sense. There is a gush, but...
Actually are watching the Twitch, if it's working in some way.
So Menendian's going to gush his response to the Wasteland. He does save the Underground from the Wasteland. I'm sure Dave knew this was likely to happen. He just wanted Steve to pick up both his lands.
Yeah, it's powerful.
I mean, his game plan involves Steve never having time to cast all 8 of the cards he's now holding.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good start, I feel like, for Dave. I don't know the Merfolk deck especially well, and I certainly don't know the Doomsday deck well, but, he has 2 Lords out. He set him back on mana completely, and, he got value out of his mental misstep, so things seem to be going well. Still has a few cards in hand. Could have some free counters or similar.
Yeah, I feel like this isn't enough to win all by itself, but a 3rd Lord or a 2nd free counter would really pinch Menendian.
Well, if he were to cast Doomsday, let's say this turn, and not win the game, he would be at 7 life facing 6 damage. So any Lord would kill him. He wouldn't be able to fetch, which doesn't really matter because we know he has 2 lands in hand. But he's really under the gun.
Yep.
And I don't think it's easy to win with Doomsday in 1 turn.
Especially from
you do quite a bit. You have to draw 6 cards if you're going to win with Loud Maniac. Yeah, this is not a slow clock, and you have to assume that Dave's hand probably is either disruption or more threats. I mean, that's basically all the deck is. So. I do know that no matter what happens, it'll take a bit of time. That is interesting that he's going with the fetch land with all the islands in hand.
He must not be casting Doomsday this turn. Well, I guess he can crack before casting Doomsday, and it actually doesn't matter. It's kind of free.
Yeah, but
15, half of 15 rounded down is the same as half of 14.
Right. It is kind of free, although also kind of irrelevant.
Says go. So I guess he didn't want to play the basic island, and he didn't want to be vulnerable to Wasteland.
Well, he can block these island-locked creatures should he have flash-free creatures.
What creatures is he going to have? Blood Maniac?
Sack Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual, Elvis Spirit Guide, Simian Grunts, Eat Your Lord of Atlantis, Gut Shot your Phantasmal Image.
Okay.
Can't believe you couldn't.
No 3rd Lord for Dave, by the way. That's the more relevant thing going on here. No pre-combat creature.
Right, although it's not going to change the clock if he can play another creature. Let's say he plays Silvergill Adept. He's looking at easily lethal damage next turn, and the Lord's not really going to change that. So if he plays any threat this turn, he is likely representing lethal next turn. The only thing that would not, or even Curse Catcher, he has 2 Lords. So yeah, any creature would do that.
Yep.
Flusterstorm is one of the cards that I would have expected more likely to come out of Steven's deck.
Wow, yeah.
Not great in this matchup. But I don't know if he doesn't have other choices. Of course, True Name Nemesis would be the card I would expect to come out of Dave's deck. So
it's a little slow in the matchup. I mean, you need a critical mass of Merfolk, though, especially with Silvergill Adepts. Like, you don't really want to go below 20 fish. Like, Silvergill Adept, if you have to pay 5 for it, it's not very good.
Yeah, it's a little weak at that point. Lotus it out on turn 2.
So yeah, Dave has basically said, all right, here's lethal. What do you got? Maybe I have a Force of Will. Maybe I have a Daze. You have to go. You are obliged to go for it.
Or at least deal with a creature if he has some way to deal with that. I don't know.
I believe Menendian's only way of dealing with creatures is winning the game.
He could potentially gain turns by tendrilsing. That would not leave him in a great spot, I imagine, though.
Yeah, I mean, he's taking 11. But yeah, sure.
Well, I'm saying
Okay.
it's the one way.
Black. There's the Doomsday.
All right.
So going to lose half of his 8 life down to 4, but he was dead anyway. Can Menendian build a stack and draw into that stack of cards such that he wins the game here?
So if you're Dave, let's say that True Name Nemesis is your last blue card in hand and Force of Will. What would you do on your turn? Let's say you're holding Island, True Name, Force of Will. Do you present the lethal board, or do you hold back Force of Will?
I probably hold Force of Will. It's easy for me to say that now that there's a Doomsday on the stack, though.
Well, you knew something was going to have to come, right? Well, I guess not. I guess if you just say go, he doesn't.
Yeah, if you say go, he can, but you give him another draw phase. You give him a turn.
Potentially, right?
Yeah, I think I would hold up Force of Will, though.
It's an interesting spot. Also,
yeah, it is for sure.
This game.
So Menendian is resolving this Doomsday. Like, Dave did not have a Force of Will, did not have a Daze.
Or he did have a Force of Will and did not have a blue card.
Fair enough. That is possible. So in order to win the game, Menendian has to be able to draw into the top card because he can't say go. Last game, he was able to say go, draw the top card of the stack, which I don't know if it was the Hercules or the Ancestral, but I mean, that's kind of how he got started. This time he has to win from here, so he's going to have to play what? A Mox? Like Sapphire Ancestral? Oh, he can Gush. If he's holding a Gush, he can pick up his 2 lands, Gush into the top 2 cards of the deck, which could easily be, Black Lotus Ancestral, something like that.
Right. He has to have a way to draw cards, and if it's not Gush, a way to then cast them. Of course, if he has those things, then this is kind of an easy decision because there's not that many options here. This can't be a tough sequencing necessarily like the other game because you have to win right now.
Yeah, so in the last game he had to say go. He had to be as resilient as possible while saying go. This game he's either got Sapphire Ancestral or he's got Gush, and he's got Gush. Okay, so he draws the top 2 of the stack. I mean, Black Lotus Ancestral would certainly get him the other 3.
Right, which...
Although he's got to play... He's got to then play...
1/4 card. So, I think he just gets, like, Sensei's Divining Top or something. Like, if you just put Ancestral, then Lotus, then Lad Maniac and Moxes, and, again, just like a top or preordain or whatever, that's enough, right?
Yeah, this should be Menendian's game. I mean, I guess he's still... I can't imagine that Dave would have let Doomsday resolve if he had any irrelevant counter magic, so...
Right. Dave actually did text me before the turn that he was just going to go all in on True Name while he did have Force of Will without the blue card. Besides True Name. So he drew a 5th land for the turn.
Wow.
His last 2 cards being Force True Name, and decided to present lethal rather than hold it up.
Wow. Interesting. No, it's a reasonable judgment call. It clearly did not work out. I mean, he's had a couple of judgment calls that seemed okay but didn't work out. And looks like he's going to lose this match to Steve Menendian.
Yeah, this was a pretty good draw out of the Doomsday deck, I feel like. I thought Dave had a pretty good chance.
Dave's he
drew a blue card for his turn. The game's also...
Yawgmoth's Will is the other card in the stack, by the way, that makes everything work.
Yeah, I forgot Yawgmoth's Will was in this format. That's a good card.
It's a pretty good one. Gets back to Lotus, gets back to the Petal. He's got the Ancestral in order to draw the card. Now he just needs to play his Laboratory Maniac and then cast out Ancestral. Wow, so Dave had Force of Will. No other blue card, decided to present a lethal board instead of holding back and giving Menendian an extra turn. Again, Steve had a 1-turn window, and again, he hit it. Put together the Doomsday Kill, and Steve Menendian wins the match 2-0.
That was a cool match. I wish it went faster so that it felt as exciting as the gameplay actually was. Because I feel like if that match was played out like at a normal pace that you see in Magic, that you would have been like, wow, that match was great. As opposed to like, I wish it would just kind of end already in some ways while being
Yeah,
very cool. But yeah, that was actually really good Magic. I feel like.
I agree. That was cool. All right, so what's going to happen now is I got to leave you in charge. I got to
Yeah.
go play. So we're going to take a quick break, and I'm going to get off the call. Tom Martell is going to come in, and it'll be Tom and Eric casting my match. It looks like the A12 Lord is waiting for me, so I will see you guys on the other side.